Wrong starting screen. What up, what up, what up? If you're wondering what that noise is, I'm listening to my friend Riley and his girlfriend Anna open Pokemon cards on Twitch. You know, gotta support your friends, guys. Gotta support your friends in their dreams. Or just the fact that they're having fun. Support that at all times. We're gonna finish some stuff up here and then we're gonna get the show started. I just got super bummed out because I saw my Superb Owl Week the Superb Owl Week game that I was on, or Superb Owl Week stream that I did, got hit with copyright claims once again because there are people who clearly have songs that are similar to Christina's because they use the same beat making software, and then when you go listen to the song, it sounds nothing like the song that Christina made, which is funny. And then one of them was actually a copyright hit from a company that like is in charge of getting Christina like listens and stuff, or like get her streams of her show. So that's funny to me. So yeah, that's what we've been doing. So we got an audio check. We just got a little sound check there for free from Twitch. Been on Twitch like all day watching my friend's podcast, and honestly, I just woke up. I only got like 5 hours of sleep. I got home at like midnight, and I worked on the show until 4 o'clock in the morning. I got like a ton of work done on the show until 4 a.m. And then what else was I gonna say? Yeah, I got a ton of work done until 4 a.m. and then I didn't realize how tired I was until I ate my food, my lunch, and then laid down for half a second, and of course I fell asleep, and then 2 hours later here I am trying to remember what year it is, you know what I mean? Trying to work on a couple more stories. I was gonna wait till the hydration break to do one of these, but I got 3 Jager Bombs right here, so if you don't know what a Jager Bomb it is, a 1 ounce Red Bull, 1 ounce Jägermeister. Oh, by the way, fuck Russia. Just want to put that out there, in case it was ever actually up for question. You know what I mean? Fuck them. As a red-blooded American, fuck them. Yo, if you were not here for it, this past Wednesday, we did what is called a study hall episode, where I just kind of like chilled out and did like a little study hall episode. Like I just chilled out and studied for the podcast. Like looked up random stories for the podcast, and honestly, I did like some current events. I think I talked about like breast milk one time because I read a Reuters article the night before about breast milk, and I was looking at my Twitter feed and stuff like that. So getting more organized. I'm wondering if like I can like legit screen share stuff and wonder if it won't get taken down. Only one way to find out. Like I'm such a small YouTuber right now. 17 subscribers and growing as usual. The Broke Nation rises. But yeah, no, we are about to pop off for our first show in a while, if you think about it, but I try not to think about it. Did a show on Wednesday. Talked about a lot of things. I gotta hurry up and do this show and get out of here because, as usual, I am running late. Let's open up this YouTube. Let's open up this little YouTube right here. If I sound like my speech is slurred, it's because I'm tired. My sleep schedule is probably messed up. No, I'm gonna go hang out with my girlfriend, so I should be good. Gain momentum. What is that supposed to mean? Is that relative to the situation? Because damn. Newspaper called the Kiev Independent just tweeted out a couple hours ago. Ukraine's president said that that Russia will attack with full force this night. Our team will be up through the night to bring you the latest news. Our people are placed in and out of Kiev. I've learned recently that Kiev is actually not the way that we pronounce Kiev. So even if the internet goes down in Kiev, we should be able to continue post updates. Some dark shit, bro. I was on TikTok, and I'm sure a bunch of you guys saw it. If you were on TikTok last night, it was probably like the most viewed TikTok stream that was going around. But it was a guy in a subway tunnel trying to survive. Thought they were waiting on a subway for a really long. Thought they were waiting on a tram to get out of town. And then one of my friends, Tim Costello, we used to work together. He's like, nah, dude. The subway doubles as a bomb shelter. And I was like, ooh, that is some dark shit, my man. Brookboy Sports Podcast. Here we go. By the way, don't let people convince you that tweeting about what's going on in the Ukraine doesn't do anything. It does a great job of mitigating what the attempt of the Russian government is to do, which is, of course, to spread the lie about how Ukraine started it and get up in there. So, yeah. And I'm dead serious about that too. Like they've been trying to lie on on a global scale, and I don't think there's been a single country that's fallen for their bullshit yet, which is once again interesting because a lot of Americans don't fall for that type of bullshit from the Russians, but for some reason fall for a lot of other bullshit that is spewed by people. I have to imagine it's because they like the certain people that are spewing the lies, and that does make a big difference. Like, I will say this: there are a lot of conservative people in America that jerk off to Vladimir Putin because they like to masturbate to power. So, just keeping that out there. And by the way, it is very evident who those guys are. They try and tell you as often as possible without saying that they support the Russian government, which is funny. Did we just go down? We did not. Did this episode just go down? No, something weird just happened. Yo, it did. What the fuck, Twitch? My episode just went down, but it says I'm live. Man, this is... Oh, God. Hold on. OBS, did I skip any? I haven't even skipped a frame. It just went down. This actually happened like 2 weeks ago. So stupid. It was uber stupid. Not just regular stupid. Uber stupid. What the hell is going on? Or is something else going on? Wait, this is weird. I guess most of Twitch went down. My friend that I was listening to, his stream went down too. Maybe my internet messed up or something. Although I'm looking at it right now, it doesn't look like there was any interruptions. By the way, if you don't follow my guy Playtel, Platoe, go out there and do that. Like and subscribe. Well, it's Twitch, so just subscribe. If you want to like and subscribe anyone, like and subscribe me on YouTube, please. I try hard. I really do. I try very hard to make things entertaining. So, NBA. Are we talking about the NFL at all? Oh yeah. I mean, I guess we need to talk about the fact that the thing is happening next week. Is it next Monday? It's gonna be lit. It's next Saturday. Wait, that's not right. It is a primetime event. I know that. Don't worry, guys. I recall that we moved the combine to primetime TV. I do recall that. Anyway, if you just joined into the show, or if you're watching live somewhere else, make sure you feel free to drop some things like your hot takes, your warm takes, your other things into the chat. Any questions, like legit any questions into the chat, whether you be watching on YouTube or on Twitch, which, by the way, apparently 5 minutes into the show, we went down. And this is so weird. I really hope that's not what just happened, because it just segmented 5 minutes out of my show for like no reason. It's so stupid. Anyway, his stream just went down again. I think Twitch is like fucking with me right now. Sometimes Twitch does this glitchy thing where like it struggles to maintain stuff. Like, oh man. Where is it? Twitch. Alright, I just closed it, opened it again. Yeah, my friend didn't come back online. He just left. It's weird. And yeah, let me check these videos. Okay, it's not segmented. Okay, we're good. It's just being stupid, because it increased the length of the little segment from like 5 minutes to 11 minutes. So shout out to the people. NBA, NFL. What else are we doing? We are talking about the UFC. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about things that we could do and you, baby. What other sports do we talk? Guys, come on, get it together. What sports do we talk about in the show that I didn't tell you about yet? Let's go. Hashtag MLB, MLBPA. I just like to point out the saddest shit. The saddest situation is that the saddest situation is that we only talk about one of these sports because something really stupid is going on, and nobody's really saying anything about it. But let's have a conversation about it when we get there. Don't you guys love that? That's like my go-to line. Like, hey, look, we'll talk about it when we get there. And then sometimes we don't get there. That's one of my favorite things that happens on the show. Like driving around like hours later and being like, oh shit, I said that we were going to get to that on the show and then we didn't. Classic. Really good for endearing trust to people. Right? That's how trust works, right? NBA Twitter. Hashtag NFL draft. You know, one day I would love to be able to get to the point where I could do like a competent NFL draft. It's just that like right now in the current status of my knowledge, not even my knowledge, really like the current status of me as a host of the show, I don't know how you do a show that's like, when you talk about the NFL draft, you can't just make it like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or anything like that, right? It has to be like a full-on thing. Like, it has to be like the whole episode is dedicated to the draft. And yeah, no, it's tough, man. It really is. I guess maybe one day I will ascend to a level where I can do that in a competent way. Let's talk about you and me. All the things that we could be. I feel like tonight I'm going to get some nasty looks at the bar from the prettiest girl in there as well. Morgan Fairchild is trending. I'm not here to ask questions like that. If you're wondering, yes, I do use desktop Twitter. I know, genius level type shit, right? We'll admit the mobile app makes people look like they're more important than they are, and I think it's because of the sizing of their profile picture. When you are looking at the desktop version, most of the text is actually significantly larger. Most of the text is significantly larger than the actual profile photos, and sometimes, you know, they're on equal footing on the internet. Or they're on equal footing on the desktop app, if that makes any sense. I like getting all of my droning, like not even droning, but like bloviating, as some people would say, out of the way now. It's a good warm up for my voice, because a lot of it is bullshit, and a lot of it is like me trying to maintain and regain and maintain focus, which is of course a great exercise for maintaining focus for the next hour. We're gonna try and power through this episode. I'm not even gonna lie, guys. We're gonna pop it off as usual. You know how I go, baby. We always trying to turn up. We're always trying to turn up, and when I say turn up, I mean, you know, grand opening, grand closing style. We trying to be finished and we trying to be done. That's what I'll say. I really hope that's not what my thumbnail looks like for Twitch, because if it does, I'm gonna be mad as fuck. It's kind of stupid. Anyway. Alright, let's do this. Fuck. Here we go. Alright, theme song's ready. I'm gonna give myself... I'm gonna give myself to the end of the sun to make sure I got everything situated. I'm gonna double check through everything. This is Homo Beliefs by Christina Gukis. Have not gotten a copyright claim for this one yet, so we'll see how this goes. Checking my notes real quick, man. Oh. All right. Let's do it. That is the end of that song. Shout out to Christina Gugas for making that jam, that absolute bop. It's about that time. It's about that time to make some magic happen. Let's do it. If you are going to be here live, you're already going to be here. If you are not, you are not. I'm going to also make sure that you don't hear the echo of the show on the playback devices that I'm using. Let's see, baby. Twitch is popping off real quick. Yup. Let's do it. All right. Going live. Oh, hold on. I'm not even on the right page. Going live in 3, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, episode 182 to be precise. Yes, we're creeping up on episode 200. I would also like to point out, if you're a longtime listener of this show, you know that sometimes I duplicate episode numbers. You know that I've skipped numbers accidentally multiple times, but we're somewhere around the near vicinity of 200 total episodes when it comes to the totality run of this podcast. And quite frankly, that's what the podcast. That's not including all the other minor stuff, the TikTok stuff that I've put out there, and in particular, something that we're going to start doing now that the Tuesday episode, which was previously dedicated to football, is no longer needed because, well, the football season's over, in case you guys hadn't heard. But we will turn that into a study hall session. It is an hour and a half where I just get on stream on YouTube and on Twitch and do my research that's going to help with this podcast. And really, honestly, research that's going to help me become a better person. Because one of them, I read like a random current event story a couple of times. I read a story from Reuters about breast milk companies once again breaking the law and not being punished for it because they've historically been on that side of things when it all shakes out, where they are constantly trying to push the edge of what is and is not legal in terms of them being able to advertise or the way that they can present their product. And if you want to get more in depth on that, I suggest you check out the study hall session, especially if you got an hour and some time, an hour and a half or something, or like I think it was an hour and 10 minutes, because at the end of it, some guy from Great Britain randomly hopped into the stream and we kind of chatted it up a little bit via the chat box or whatever. It was pretty cool. It was pretty funny. His reasoning for how he got to the stream was interesting. But yeah, shout out to our newest follower. Let me make sure I say his name right. I don't know if he streams or anything like that, but I guess you can find out. Tenno Sausage and Beans. Tenno Sausage and Beans. Underscore between every single word. So it's 10_O_sausage_ in the letter in and _beans. So yeah, we, ladies and gentlemen, have a lot to get through, especially before the hour of 9 p.m. strikes the clock. We'll see if we can get through it. We'll see if we can make some magic happen here, all right? So we start off with the usual. Oh, by the way, we start off with the usual stuff. Make sure you follow me on social media. I'm trying to get some social media clout so that I can turn this into like a full-time thing right now. It is... it's a thing that I do. It's a hobby that I do, but follow me on Twitter at FB_playbook. Follow my personal Twitter account where I tweet about my life at the Ashton J. Like I tweeted about how I thought I tore something in my knee last night at a practice that I went to because I literally had like a really awkward misstep. Turns out my knee is just sore in like this really weird place, but we're gonna power through it, guys. And luckily I didn't tear anything because I'm 2 months away from championships, and then after that I will be a couple months away from MLQ championships, Major League Quidditch championships. So I really can't afford any injuries, especially considering I'm trying to make myself known for Team USA. We'll see. What else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, follow me on TikTok and Instagram, same name, The Ashton Forever. TikTok right now, and if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see it too, but I'm doing a series where I just kind of like take a random NFL draft prospect. Like the first one I did was Logan Hall. The second one I did was Darian Kennard, who actually liked the reel that I made about his progress and how he's gotten to the point where he's where he's a first round, a second round draft pick, right? So had doing a good job in some way, shape, or form if he gave it a thumbs up. But yeah, go check it out. Like, they're all less than a minute long, and they are, I would say, information packed about prospects. Other than that, we move along, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for our first segment of the show. Don't forget, we are doing 2 hydration breaks in this episode, but first and foremost, After School Special is the title of our Nerd News segment. Wisdom Gaming, which is its own independent gaming company, has signed a deal with the Minnesota Twins. Yes, the Minnesota Twins of Major League Baseball, who are currently in the midst of a lockout, but apparently got money to be able to sign a deal with Wisdom Gaming. Yes, we're going to talk about the MLB lockout and what is supposed to happen on Monday, apparently. So, Minnesota Varsity League, which is an esports league for high schoolers in the Minnesota area. And as a matter of fact, it has over 50 schools involved with like 800 plus players. And it actually has a state championship game that happens in June. They have signed a deal to basically help blow that league up and not only sponsor it, but help it get the equipment that it needs and the attention that it needs to go along with it, which is wild to think about because this is essentially the UIL, if you're from Texas, but like the governing body of high school esports in Minnesota. And all I can say is like, if there's every week I come on this show, and a bunch of times I've talked about like really cool, like we talked about in England, how they're setting up a developmental camp that is just outside of within the shadow of an EPL stadium. So a lot of traditional sports getting involved with the evolution of esports and the things that can go along with it, knowing that there's a lot to be gained from being able to develop the next big esports star. There's a lot of crossover that can be had as well, and it looks like this is not only a way to normalize gaming within the realms of education, right? Because for a long time, most of us have lived in an environment, whether it be because our parents were ignorant about what video games were about, or because it actually did affect us this way. A lot of us have lived in an environment where gaming has been frowned upon because it stopped you from being able to focus on your schoolwork. It stopped you from being able to focus on your project or read the reading assignment that you were given. And now it's being embraced now it's being embraced by education across the board, which is pretty impressive, especially considering there's a college aspect to this as well. So to have a high school based league, and I'm sure at some point somebody's going to go even younger than this, right? To get the real youngsters out there, the kids who got those fresh reflexes that you can train up and everything like that to try and develop the next big thing when it comes to esports. A lot of the major stars in the in e-gaming sports started off, young, just like everybody else did when it comes to playing video games. But now there seems to be once again another brick in the road of creating a more feasible path to becoming not only a really good esports player, but on top of that, being able to build a platform to go along with it, which we've seen can reach absolutely absurd heights in regards to guys like Ninja, and in regards to guys like Shroud and stuff like that. And of course, FaZe Clan, who is constantly making deals. Every single week you read about some new endorsement deal that FaZe Clan is signed onto, and they have, let a lot of those guys tell it on their team or whatever. It's tough to get to that point, and of course it is. They're not only immensely talented, but they put in a ton of hard work to go along with it. So this is a huge step forward for esports in general, and not only America but worldwide, because anything that harbors anything that is going to be helpful to the development of more esports players is going to help the global community as well. So shout out to Wisdom Gaming, not shout out to the Minnesota Twins because they're kind of holding up baseball here. But yeah, that's what I got for Nerd News. Wisdom Gaming joining up with the Minnesota Twins to help develop and blow up the Minnesota Varsity League, and a massive development forward for esports. Moving on. So, as some of you guys know, this show is billed as the best and the worst that sports has to offer every single week. I would be remiss if I didn't have actual segments called the best of the best and the worst of the worst, where I talk about the best and the worst things that I saw in sports this week. So, for best of the best, Captain America lives on, ladies and gentlemen. The American Dream himself, Joe Johnson, today is February 25th. which reminded me of a very important deadline that I have for tomorrow. February 25th is today. Yesterday, February 24th, in a matchup versus Puerto Rico, Joe Johnson, at 40 years old, scored 80 points in a World Cup qualifier for Team USA, because basically, like the World Cup qualifier, it can't be played by NBA players, right? It has to be played by people who are available. So there's a mix of like old vets and college players and stuff like that, and people who just like not in the normal quote unquote mainstream world of Team USA. But Joe Johnson went out there and carried the squad as they were down by 10 points at halftime and were able to come up with what looked, I think it was like a 13-point win. So shout out to Joe Johnson. And honestly, this is here as best of the best just because it brought a smile to my face. They talked to Joe Johnson, I want to say beforehand, and he talked about how, like, he's like, yeah, man, like, I just want to hoop, bro. Like, it's just really funny. He's like, I just want to hoop, because he still has that mentality, and he just so happens to be hooping for Team USA, like, of all teams on the face. So he's like, yeah, man, I just want to play basketball, you know what I mean? Like, nothing too crazy. He talks about how him and his 15-year-old son are constantly in the gym, and he made it seem like a World Cup qualifier for Team USA basketball was just like another opportunity to go roll the ball out and have a good time. So as long as he's having fun, I'm having fun. Of course, Joe Johnson has made money hand over fist in his time in the NBA. A lot of it well deserved. First of all of it well deserved, because you're worth as much as you convince them to pay you. And Joe Johnson, of course, brought a lot of joy for me. Those early Atlanta Hawks teams will always stick in my mind as one of the teams that should have made it but never did. And I don't think I'll ever understand why. Al Horford, like I've said before on the show many a time, is one of my favorite centers of all time for a multitude of reasons. But shout out to Joe Johnson, a.k.a. the American Dream, for still chasing the dream, baby. You love to see it. And on that note, it's time for our first hydration break of the show. You can't see it slightly off camera here, but we don't judge in the form of which you choose to partake in your hydration. But for tonight, since it is Friday, I will be partaking in these two Jager Bombs right here, mainly because I was just taking a nap. If you joined us before, if you joined me before we actually officially started the podcast, but while the stream was active, that's always the fun part where you get to hear all my ramblings and thoughts. Anyway, I was talking about how I just woke up from a nap and it was really struggling, and why my voice sounded like it was really groggy for that reason. A lot of people say that is how my voice sounds normally. So, but I will point this out. I had just woken up from a nap, and there's no drink on the face of the planet that will help you rally at a party, ladies and gentlemen, or in case you are like me, where you need to power through a podcast so you can go hang out with your girlfriend before she gets upset about how late you are to hang out with her at the bar. You too can be like me and hit some Jager Bombs. Perfect mix of actual liquor and energy drink. So it's 1 ounce Red Bull, 1 ounce Jager. Nothing too crazy. Anyway, we will be right back as soon as I figure out what song we're going to play, because we've been hit with multiple copyright strikes so far because of some songs that apparently have like the same beat track that Christina used. And it's really funny because I didn't know you could use beat software and then sign a deal with like a record label and be like, oh yeah, like I made this beat. I thought every beat had to be made from like some version of scratch, but I guess not. Anyway, Visions of a Legend. Hopefully we don't get knocked off for this one. Visions of a Legend for 3 minutes and 9 seconds right here on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast for our hydration break. Oh man. Wow. Poorly timed. I did not look at the timer at all at any point during the hydration break. Hopefully you got properly hydrated. I am in the midst of Jager Bomb number 4. Hold on a second here. We got it, guys. Don't worry. It's a Friday night, baby. February 25th. We're having a good time. I'm having a good time, at least. Hopefully you are too. Joining me here to talk about sports, I would like to imagine. But here we go. We got a couple more things to have a conversation about. A lot of them are centered around sad things, so prepare yourself. Not sad, kind of stupid, mostly stupid things. I don't think I do a really good job of choosing topics that are actually like enjoyable for my listeners or anything like that, which is weird because I like to talk about sports in general, but I just couldn't, for worst of the worst, in about a week ago, I just couldn't resist. I really couldn't, and I apologize. You'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean here in a second. You will. Sorry. We are going to power through. Sorry in advance is what that sorry is for. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and then just regular subscribe if you are, regular follow if you're on Twitch. We got one follower, what was it, earlier this week, actually, so shout out. I did a stream for an hour in the middle of the day on a Wednesday and got a follower from the UK, which is weird. Shout out to Tino Sausage and Beans. Shout out for you joining the train, hopping on the train. I do not have any crypto advice for you, so you're here for just the fun and enjoyment. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at FB_playbook. Follow the podcast at BrokeBoyPod. Follow my personal Twitter account at TheAshtonJ. Follow my Instagram account at TheAshtonForever. And then, of course, follow on Twitch and YouTube at BrokeBoySports. Yeah. That's what we got. So we've already done best of the best, which is, of course, we did Nerd News, which is the Minnesota Twins signing a entertainment / esports production company to help blow up the Minnesota Varsity League in terms of like getting exposure out there and everything like that. Signing a big deal with them, which of course is going to put financial backing behind something that could mold the next esports superstar out of Minnesota. Who knows? On top of that, we did best of the best, and it was just Joe Johnson playing basketball. It was very pure in terms of entertainment. For me personally, it was just Joe Johnson going out there and hooping it up, baby, and still getting a chance to be able to do that. Shout out to him, and hopefully he gets to keep doing it for Team USA as they are in that weird gap in time where a lot of the NBA players, well, all of the NBA players are not available to compete for the World Cup, so they got to go out there and put together some of the vets to go out there and get the job done for the superstars to come in later and play for the World Cup. I don't know why I just did that. Anyway, please don't cancel me. Actually, can I share something with you guys? I've never actually been concerned about the whole getting canceled thing. Yes, I've said stupid things in my life, in my history. I can tell you, as a person who checks his Facebook flashbacks every day, and I can scroll back to what I used to tweet when I was like in college, the stuff I used to comment when I was in high school, and I'm 29 years old. I can definitely tell you, like, I've said the R word. I've tweeted out, not tweeted out, actually. Before, when I got on Twitter, I had matured to the point where I no longer use the R word, right? It's a personal decision for me. I don't like using that word in association with when I'm trying to say something is bad or when I'm trying to say something is stupid, because the medical condition Down syndrome that typically is what you're referring to when you say the R word. Carlos Mencia popularized it, and it actually hurt a lot of people in the process of doing that, and it cost me absolutely nothing to find another word to use in reference to idiocracy, because one, being an idiot is an active choice, and the R word in terms of like neurodivergence, in terms of Down syndrome and stuff like that, is not a choice. So it's almost like it's taking something that is not a choice and then using it as some way to harm a group of people who honestly can't defend themselves, have other people to defend them, luckily in their lives, because there's a lot of people who make it their mission to make sure that those who suffer from Down syndrome and other diseases similar to that don't have to deal with the negative stigma that comes with it, because there's a lot of it, and that's the number one reason why you shouldn't use it as a slur, because it empowers people to do horrible things to people who, for the most part, don't do anything wrong, and like for the most part don't harm people who are just trying to live their lives. So I like I said before, I've used that word early on. I used it when it wasn't a thing. in terms of like being considered a slur. It was a word, one of the few words that people thought you could use at the time. So, someday that's going to come up and, they may take my podcast away. Who knows? That's going to happen at some point. I've never been a person to use the F word, like in reference to our gay brothers and sisters, our queer brothers and sisters out there. I would like to say I'm black, so like the number one racial slur, I have used that a bunch. Like, I've used nigga multiple times. I've said nigga on this podcast a lot. I just said it again. Anyway, someday it'll all come crashing down. But first, I gotta build something that can come crashing down. You know what I mean? We'll see. We'll find out. I don't know why I just went on that diatribe. It may be the Jager Bombs making me reconsider things about my life. Anyway, we got things to talk about for Worst of the Worst. Maybe that's why. Worst of the Worst is coming up. And like I said, the next two segments, super fucked up stuff. But we're going to power through it. We're going to make it happen. Worst of the worst, ladies and gentlemen, the worst thing I saw in sports. Oh, it's baseball. Who would have thought? Not the actual sport of baseball. I'm not here to make some like really messed up joke about people who actually dedicate their entire lives to being really good at that sport, and it's very difficult to do it on almost any level, but especially at the professional level where you're talking about like people who are not only genetic anomalies, but also have worked immensely and extremely hard to get to the point where they can turn it into a living. MLB has started a flurry of things and actually wrote like a whole thing that you guys know how I do. I do that thing where I like write something out and I very clearly just like read it. I'm trying not to do that because honestly, I have this memorized off the top of my head. I've read so many stupid articles about this lockdown. The MLB is about to lose millions. The players are still fighting to break what the owners have set up in terms of the ability to keep cost of players down. And it's like airtight stuff. We talk about like arbitration. We talk about service years in terms of determining whether somebody is a major leaguer or not, how many games that person played, how they finished in terms of statistical value counting for or against their service years, all that kind of stuff like that. Arbitration that is heavily in favor of the team. But in recent times, I feel like we've seen more and more where like the players win in arbitration, which I guess is a good turning point because most of the time when it comes to like legal stuff, very little things in terms of like law and legality has to do with like whether or not the law is being adjudicated correctly. But yeah, this whole situation is basically like the team owners have the young talent in their sport in a goddamn chokehold. And when I say chokehold, I mean like literally these people can't breathe on a regular basis because they're trying to go out here and earn a living playing the sport that they love. And it's like the amount of money that minor league players make is not like a livable wage in the time that we live in, right? Which through the years, like we said, we've seen minor league players are basically living in under minimum wage standards in a lot of ways. That Mark Appel thread, if you didn't see it on Twitter, Mark Appel is the former number one overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft for the Houston Astros, and he basically was a career minor leaguer. He spent a lot of time up and down because so many people knew that he had a ton of potential. It just never honed itself and turned into skill, which is difficult. Like, let's be for real, it's hard to become like a top tier elite level baseball player, especially when you're number one overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft. But Mark Appel eventually became a career minor leaguer, and he actually wrote an entire thread about his experience plus his observed experience of other people who were not the number one pick overall in the MLB draft. Like, we know this for a fact. Even if you're just a football fan, you know that like each one of those spots has a slotted amount of money that can be the maximum amount of money that you sign for, and there's less and less wiggle room as you get lower and lower in those draft picks. And if you know anything about baseball, there's a shit ton of rounds. Like last year, the Washington Nationals drafted 20 pitchers into their minor league system. Drafted 20 pitchers. That's not including the UDFA type stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of spots to be filled, but people are not willing to pay a decent wage for those spots to be filled because they're like, you're minor league players, you're not really generating all that money, and so we pay you equivalent to the amount of money you generate, which is not true because they're literally elite level talents at their craft. They're not paid like they're elite level talents. They're paid as if they are They're paid as if they're working like a regular job, like an everyday person, even though they have a clearly, specifically unique skill set. Yeah, sorry. Just got the text message that I need to speed it up a little bit. Anyway, MLB has gotten themselves into a situation where the PA wants more rights for their players, right? They want more money for their players available for them to be able to make. They want the ability for players to gain service years faster so that they can get to the point where Carlos Correa is now, where he earns the big bucks like he is a Major League Baseball player, like he has been for years, right? They want to get as many players on that track to that point faster and faster as time goes on. And the owners of teams, of course, want to maintain the status quo where they refuse to, where they can maximize the amount of juice that they get out of each one of these individual next level talents without having to obviously pay for it. Which, tell me if you've heard that before. People who are in positions of ownership are trying to get as much talent out of you without paying the top dollar for that talent. Who would have thought? Apparently, there were also some attempts to restructure the draft selection situation, which is that this is actually a really funny aspect of this. There were people that were trying to restructure the percentage chances of you getting like a certain draft spot based off of your record and stuff like that. And it was to prevent incentivizing tanking, just like in every other sport. And then apparently the union came to the understanding that teams were not tanking on purpose. Some teams just sucked that much, which... I mean, honestly, I think that that's the case for a lot of teams in professional sports. I think there's a lot fewer teams in professional sports that are tanking than people believe. For instance, the Detroit Pistons. Have they been tanking for 15 years, or are they just perhaps poorly run? We can ask the same thing about the Oklahoma City Thunder with Sam Presti, who, by the way, drafted 3 MVPs and has not been back to the Western Conference Finals. So you have to wonder, like, when does it pan out? I know it's weird. And he's heralded as one of the best executives in the NBA. With the deadline coming up, we've mentioned before, the people with the money and time have everything on their side. Major League Baseball has laid down the gauntlet and said if there's not a deal in place by this upcoming Monday, which today is February 25th, and the Monday that they're referring to is February 28th. There's not a deal laid out by February 28th, the final day of Black History Month. They are going to start canceling regular season games, and they've also laid out that they will not be negotiating in making up games either by extending the season by a couple of days, which, by the way, the last time that there was a lockout that affected the regular season, which was 3 decades ago, 31 years ago, they added 3 days onto the back half of the season, and it allowed for all of the games, all 162 games in the Major League Baseball season to be played, which means, of course, the players got paid all 100 and however much money is divvied up because of the game checks and everything like that, because people are going to start losing money, and the number one group of people that lose money and get affected by it, you guessed it, buddy, the players. That's always who's getting hurt in this situation. Time not on the field always hurts the players. So just keep that in mind when you're talking about like any form of collective bargaining negotiation, but in particular Major League Baseball, the time spent after Monday that this drags on puts untold pressure on the players union to absolutely collapse to the demands, not even demands, the slight acquiescence, because I'm not even going to give him credit for this. Major League Baseball did slightly tweak like small amounts of money in favor of the players. I think there's one situation where the players asked for like $115 million to be added to the player pool, and they added 20. They went from 15 to 20, and they were like, we feel like that's a fair amount. So obviously the players union, for the simple fact that they don't have the advantage of being able to sit out for long periods of time, is going to have to acquiesce in some way, shape, or form. It's just a matter of how much. And of course, somebody's going to have to start having a long and tough conversation over the next couple days, over this weekend, to discuss whether or not, they're going to have to start power ranking what they hold nearest and dearest, and then figure out in relation to that power ranking what they can actually get. And the players union probably going to get fucked over again. So yeah, there's And also, I'd like to take this time to stop and dispel the myth that this is billionaires arguing with millionaires. This is literally people who are making close to minimum wage, slightly above minimum wage to play professional baseball at the minor league level versus billionaires, which is why the billionaires are going to win out in the end, because the people who are most affected, who are most vulnerable to this situation, are not going to get the support that they need when it's all said and done, because they're not just going to magically quadruple the average salary of a minor league baseball player, which is something that was requested. I think they were requesting tripling by the PA to get it to almost, I think it's like $775,000, so almost $1 million. You know what I mean? Or I'm sorry, yeah, $775,000, almost $1 million. To get it to that level. And that's probably just not going to happen. So every second, every day that minor league players have to go without money, it just puts them in a worse hole. And on top of that, in the end, it seems like the Players Association is just going to have to sign a bad deal, like they have been, and unless they have some means of collecting money together and distributing it amongst players to get them in a position where they're able to sit out for long periods of time and have it get to the point where the lack of stadium revenue, the lack of actual games being played, the not being able to have stories written in newspapers across the world, right, is going to start affecting the owners, which could take a while, right? Major League Baseball can't afford to miss an entire season. The Players Association can't afford to miss an entire season, and the owners can't either. So at some point, way further down the line, the owners start getting affected by this just as much as the players are. Don't know where that point is. I do know that Major League Baseball has given themselves a major advantage by setting a deadline of Monday to start canceling games, because the revenue for all players, regardless of how much you make in the league, is connected to that deadline. And when that is the case, that's when that's the objective hard deadline when you start slowly bleeding the players dry. That's literally what it is. It's like you figure it out and you give up and you acquiesce to what we're giving you now, or we start bleeding people dry. You know what I mean? Leaving them on the side of the road type stuff. But yeah, that's what we got for worst of the worst. Major League Baseball shooting itself in the foot again, because there hasn't been a lockout in effect in 31 years. And we're sitting on the cusp of one happening now, because we're getting to the point where spring training basically is out of the question, you know. Anyway, moving on to about a week ago. This is our second shitty story, and then we will power through. We're going to do an NBA update, and we have one NHL story in what's going on. I do have a media suggestion this week, though. About a week ago. Oh, yeah, I got both of the cameras set up. Did I forget to tell you guys that? I got both of the cameras set up. So last week, for about a week ago, Art Briles had not coached in college football in 7 years, and I think you know exactly where I'm going with this. This week, he's the new offensive coordinator for Grambling State University. So I'm going to take this time and regale you with why this is truly... Honestly, there's very few words that can describe just the level of stupidity, devious, harmful behavior that this is, right? So Art Briles hadn't coached college football since 2016. He is now the OC for Grambling State University and HBCU, which is head coached by Hugh Jackson, who, if you remember a couple weeks ago, also threw his hat in the ring when Brian Flores was talking about the amount of money that he was paid to intentionally tank and lose games, saying that his was pretty close to the amount of money that Brian Flores has gotten. He's the former Bengals coach, longtime Bengals coach. In case you forgot, Art Briles was the head coach of the Baylor Bears, while multiple sexual assault allegations and rape allegations, some of which resulted in actual jail time, and an almost unheard of concept in America when it comes to like sexual assault and rape. Like very few times on a grand scale can somebody get to the point where they're actually convicted of rape and assault, right? We've seen that happen so many times, especially when in regards to athletes. Now, I wouldn't call it a cover-up, although the federal government did fine the Baylor University for lying about the number of rapes that happened on campus in comparison to the actual number of rapes that happened on campus. I wouldn't call it a cover-up. But there are multiple instances in regards to sexual assault on Baylor's campus with football players involved that took the Title IX department years to investigate upon the initial revelation that they had happened, right? Almost like they were intentionally dragging their feet on a very sensitive, a time-sensitive situation. Like that one time it took them 2 months to respond to a sexual assault allegation where a soccer player who was raped by a football player. I think this is the case that I think a lot of people remember. This is with Achua, who transferred from Boise State University to Baylor, played defensive end, who actually ended up going to jail. Or no, I think he ended up he went to jail for 2 months and got out on quote-unquote good behavior. Yeah. So she reported that she was raped by a football player who would later be convicted by Baylor. He would later be convicted in like a federal or like in a state court for like actual rape. Baylor told her there was not enough evidence for the school to act upon what she had said. I would also like to point out in the course of that investigation or her report, after he assaulted her, he told her, like, I didn't rape you. Like, she said that's what he said to her. She also was on the soccer team, ended up, the only reason she knew this guy is because they had a class together, and he would, like, constantly try and hit on her and stuff like that, and she thought that they got past the point, which, by the way, like, is a real thing, like, with guys and girls. Like, you can hit on somebody, and then when they, like, reject you or whatever, you kind of become friends. That's the thing. She thought they gotten past that. They gotten to that point. She was helping him study, and it turned into a situation where she was assaulted. He told her she was not raped. She continued to have to go to class with the man who raped her. That's like a real thing, and it created and caused a mental breakdown for her that eventually resulted in her actually transferring to another school. So yeah, once again, seems like the only person who really felt uncomfortable after a sexual assault was the person who committed the sexual assault. Really weird how that's like a constant thing that keeps coming up. But yeah, the Baylor private Christian university, I like to point out, said that they are not, there's not enough evidence for them to act. In total, according to one of the reports, there was 52 rapes on campus involving the football team while Art Briles was the head coach. Pretty much everyone got fired or resigned. None of the official people who were in charge of the team and really in charge of the program and the athletic department went to jail. As a matter of fact, most of them went on to go play. Most of them went on to other jobs. In particular, one went on to work for the Liberty Flames, if you're familiar with that, as their athletic director. Multiple players were actually convicted, and of course, the absolutely endless amount of damage done to the young ladies in this situation that were either assaulted or raped in the course and time that Art Briles was in charge of the Baylor Bears football team. And that hurt and damage is going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. That's a thing. Doesn't matter how much money you give them, because there was a lot of financial settlements. Even though there was no evidence that assault had gone on, there was no evidence that there had been any rapes. A lot of financial settlements. I'd also like to remind people, while all this was going on, Kim Mulkey, who is now the head coach at LSU, the LSU Tigers, she was building the powerhouse program and the powerhouse program that was the Baylor Bears women's basketball team, and she said this verbatim: If somebody's around and they ever say, I will never send my daughter to Baylor, you knock them right in the face. Because these kids pointing at her team are on this campus. I work here. My daughter went to school here. And it's the damn best school in America. Baylor is not one of the best schools in America for a multitude of reasons. I'm just tired of hearing it, she said. I'm tired of people talking on a national scale that don't know what they're talking about. Turns out, retroactively, they did know what they were talking about. If they didn't sit on those meetings and they weren't a part of the investigation, which you can have commentary on things without being a part of an investigation, you're repeating things that you've heard. It's over. It's done. It's a great institution, and I would send my daughter here, and I would pay for anybody else to send. I would pay for anybody else's daughter to come here. I work here every day. I'm in the know, and I'm tired of hearing it. Oh, you're tired of hearing about the multitude of women on your campus that were sexually assaulted. I have a strange feeling that somebody else may be just a little bit more tired of the sexual assault and rape than the rapes than you are. The problems we have at Baylor are no different than any problems that any other school in America, period, move on. Because obviously, if we have the same base level of rapes that everybody else has on campus and sexual assaults that everybody else has across America, we're fine. We're not different. We just have like the normal amount of rape, right? Move on, find another story to write. And after all that, I just honestly want to say one thing. And now that we're 5 years removed from this, 6 years removed from it, I can say with the utmost and absolute faith, without a shadow of a doubt, you can find somebody else to call them plays Grambling State. You can find somebody else to read off the play sheet. You can find somebody else to install a new offense. You can find somebody else to figure out how to coach the running backs, the quarterbacks, everything like that. You can find somebody else to do what Art Briles said that he wants to do. Art Briles says that he wants to lead men. You can find somebody who's actually a man, unlike Art Briles, to lead men. I promise you can. Anyway, Aditi Kinkhabwala interviewed Doug Williams, and Doug Williams said that he was disgusted that Grambling State would even do something like that. If you recall, Grambling fired Doug Williams, who's considered to be, the most pivotal, since we're talking about Black History Month. Doug Williams, first black quarterback to ever win the Super Bowl, and in terms of a lot of other pioneering type stuff like that in terms of the NFL, was probably the most prominent black quarterback until we got to the modern era where we exist now with the Russell Wilsons, Lamar Jacksons, Deshaun Watsons of the world, right? I know that last one isn't great or anything like that, but Deshaun Watson, you can't take away what he's done as a black quarterback in the NFL, despite all the horrible things that he's clearly done, or the horrible things that he's been accused of doing off the field. So there's that. I just want to say, you can find somebody else. You can find an upstart. And I guarantee you they're probably cheaper than Art Briles. Even if Art Briles is working for free, you can find somebody to work that'll pay you to be the offensive coordinator for Grambling State University. I promise you can. You can. I don't know how, and I get it, everybody's got their own choice to make or whatever, but if you're a kid and you have a mom, like, is Art Briles going on recruiting trips? Are they going to let Art Briles go into the houses of mothers across America, mothers and fathers across America, and sit there and try and convince them that he should be leading their son? I don't know how, like, as a parent, you look up anything that Art Briles has done. Then again, people have done it for, like, pretty horrible people. Let's be for real. But I think Art Briles is in a class of his own because he, although Art Briles has admitted that it was his fault, right? Like, he said it's his fault. He's sorry about it, but for some reason keeps pursuing, like, football. Like, when you are unqualified for a job, when you display a high level of incompetence for your job. And you can talk about a football coach who's only in charge of football. Guess what, man? The NCAA, many times over, has shown that you're responsible for the players' actions as well. It's called lack of institutional control, and it's actually resulted in, like, the destruction of programs, my guy, on multiple occasions. So I know there's a lot of people who want to get in the comments and be like, real question, bro, like, how is Art Briles responsible for the rapes that happen on campus? Well, one, there's rumor has it about the Achua kid that they had been told beforehand that he was not welcome at Boise State because there have been sexual assault cases against him beforehand, and on top of that, the Title IX investigations, which, by the way, there's like a multitude of examples of why Title IX having instilled departments in each university is not an effective way to adjudicate that kind of stuff. Because once again, it's just like having HR at your company, right? Like, who pays the paycheck for your HR? It's not like some magical, like, universal HR company that gets paid and then gives the money to the HR people. Your company pays for you to have HR. So everything that they do is through the guise of a human resources violation, through the guise of the company's perspective, right? they don't want to levy gigantic punishments because then they'll have to explain it to somebody else, because they're more concerned about opening themselves up to litigation for like wrongful termination, accusations and stuff like that. They're more likely to send you a fucking email, right? About how, oh man, we need to have a conversation about this kind of thing. And then after the conversation, whatever happens, regardless of if the conversation goes well or poorly, we're not talking about it anymore, right? That's what we're talking about. That's what Title IX essentially is for all these schools across America. Like, the Title IX reps know the coaches way better than they know the players, because the players are there for what, like 2-3 years, 4 years, 5 years max on most occasions. And then on top of that, like, they never talk to the top. Like, if you are like an average regular, if you're a student who doesn't get caught up in stuff like, I don't know, being assaulted by another player on campus or anything like that, you don't deal with that. Like, you don't deal with Title IX until something has gone horribly wrong, whereas Title IX deals with the coaches all the time, regardless of if things are going well or things are going poorly. So, that's a massive advantage, and that's a massive bias that should be taken into the situation. But if you're a person out there that doesn't understand why Art Briles got fired and why people hold him responsible for what happened on Baylor's campus, despite the fact that Art Briles has owned up to he is responsible in some way, shape, or form for what those young men did while they were on campus, because, like I said before, it's not a cover-up. But taking 2 years to investigate a sexual assault when somebody came to you, which is already difficult enough for women in general, when somebody comes to you to talk about that sexual assault, is not a great way to encourage people to continue to speak up about it. So yeah, that's all I got to say. I guess it's fuck Grambling State until indefinitely, until Art Briles no longer works there. Really, even after this, because there's a lot of people who seem to be bending over backwards for a guy who is, quite frankly, not worth it. Like, unless you're about to go undefeated on the season, I'm gonna tell you this right now, it's actually not, because the danger that Art Briles being in a position of leadership holds on a football campus and more importantly a college campus in general, massive, right? And on that note, I'm done talking about it. You can find somebody else and fuck Art Briles. Moving on, we have other things to talk about. Are we talking money? I think it's time. I think it's time for us to talk money. We Talking Money, or We Talking Money, ladies and gentlemen, is a segment where we talk about, you guessed it, money. Today's dollar amount is millions. Francis Ngannou is set to be Francis Ngannou, who is the reigning heavyweight champion of the UFC, one of the most dominant heavyweights of our time, and is working on cementing his Hall of Fame status if he gets a couple of more title defenses, but also looks like he could be the only legit challenger for John Jones, who has transitioned to the heavyweight ranks, and as we await the secret suspension to be over with or whatever, if you believe in that conspiracy theory. But nonetheless, Francis Ngannou is set to be a free agent in the year 2023, which we are in the year 2022, so 2023 is not that far off. We are at a point now where there are multiple organizations that could actually pay the money that Francis needs or Francis wants so that he can go fight in their league. And you have to wonder, does he take the attention along with them? Dana White, of course, is going to tell you that it doesn't matter who actually is the champion, which is weird because you want people to care about who's the champion, but at the same time, like, you devalue the championship constantly. For instance, how Francis had to reunite the two halves of the heavyweight championship 2 weekends ago. Yeah, that's always interesting. But yeah, there's that. That's all I got for We Talking Money, or We Talking Money. Millions of dollars on the line for Francis Ngannou. Apparently, he's like projected, or got told that the projected amount of money he should be making is like $7 million that he left on the table because he didn't like the deal that the UFC gave him. Surprise, surprise. Also, I think just like the golden rule of contract negotiation is never take the first deal. Smart move. Especially considering Francis is a lot older than a lot of people think, because he started fighting way later in life, right? Like, a lot of people don't know that. Or if you know his story, you know that he started fighting like way later in life than most guys in mixed martial arts are usually fighting. Some starting off as children, some starting off like in the early teens and stuff like that. Francis didn't start fighting until he was in his 20s. So, especially in mixed martial arts in the world that we live in now, which MMA is more prevalent than it has ever been in the world. So, especially at an entertainment level like we exist now. There was people like bare knuckle boxing talking about they were trying to hit up Francis Ngannou. I doubt that's actually a case. I will say I doubt that's the case because there's a lot of money, and if you know anything about MMA media, there's a lot of currency in saying as an organization that you're going after a UFC vet or a UFC fighter, or signing a UFC vet or a UFC fighter. It gets you headlines every single time. It does. Because a lot of people are really invested in these fighters, and a lot of reporters are invested in these fighters as well. So they have to report where they go from like league to league and all that kind of stuff like that. Regardless of how well they did in the UFC, the fact that they are attached with the premier organization within mixed martial arts goes a long way. That's what we got for We Talking Money or We Talking Money. And I think it is time. Oh, no. It's time for my media suggestion for this week, where I tell you something you should watch. I think you should watch the dunk contest from the All-Star game this past weekend. I got a couple of things. The NBA posted the version of the dunk contest where none of the misses are involved in it, so it's like 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So it actually saved you about 45 minutes of watching people miss dunks. But it's definitely something that you should still watch, because there are people who are on the internet saying that this was the worst dunk contest of like the decade, and then also, of course, comparing it to 2016 when it was Aaron Gordon versus Zach LaVine. I would also like to point out they said it's the worst dunk contest ever when the Obi Toppin jumped over a human being, while putting the ball between his legs, and finished I think with a reverse slam. Cole Anthony, who is I think 6 feet tall, or like 6'2" or something like that. He dunked in Tim's with his dad's his dad played in the NBA for the Knicks, with his dad's old jersey on. He dunked in Tim's Timberlands. If you're of the uninitiated. Jonathan Kuminga, a.k.a. the Cum God. Worst nickname in sports ever. Really glad that it never caught on. I'm really disappointed Sexland never caught on, because NBA Today did have a segment where they talked about, like, it was Colin Sexton and Darius Garland playing for the Cavaliers, and of course Colin Sexton's been hurt and stuff like that, but Darius Garland's kind of panning out a little bit. We'll see. But yeah, they used to be called Sexland because when they were on the same, you get it, the names, they were on the court at the same time. Anyway, Jonathan Kuminga, a.k.a. the Cum God, also jumped over his own teammate, Andrew Wiggins, an NBA player, went behind the back midair and dunked it cleanly. There was also the game-winning dunk where Obi Toppin bounced the ball off the backboard and then caught it. He came off the side, came off like the dunker spot, and the NBA tapped the ball on the glass and then caught it and then dunked it in for the win. There's a lot of times where people couldn't finish their dunks. Jalen Green, a lot of people were cooking Jalen Green. There was at one point, somebody said some wild shit where they said, there's somebody who said if Jalen Green was tired of dunking after, I think he was like in round 2 or something like that. They were like, if Jalen Green is tired while he's dunking right now, they drafted the wrong guy. And I was like, what? That is a wild take to drop in the middle of... That is a wild as hell take to drop. Honestly, it really is. Anyway, you should check out the dunk contest. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our last hydration break. And when we come back, I have one NHL story. And then we'll also talk about the current status of the NBA. The drama after the trade deadline. And, the playoffs are coming up pretty soon. Less than 2 months away. We'll be right back right here on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast as soon as I find a song for us to play. Closure. 2 minutes and 46 seconds. And we're back here live on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. It is time for our final segment of the show. It's called What's Poppin', where we just talk about what's poppin' in sports. Also, I'd like to take this time to clarify a statement that I made early on in the show. I started off the show by saying, and I quote, "Obviously, fuck Russia." I'd like to qualify that statement by saying, "Fuck the Russian government." The Russian people have chosen to be, have chosen to do something else. Now, they have chosen to be a part of the solution, to try and be better, and I respect it. I really do. I know it's tough seeing your government do something that you don't want, especially considering there's going to be a lot of lives lost here, seemingly in the next couple of months, really the next couple of years, let's be for real, unless somebody steps in and makes this shit not happen. Don't know if that is ever going to be the case in terms of being able to repel the Russian government, but somebody is probably going to try, and if there's any money to be gained out of it, it'll be the United States of America. But yeah, no, the situation going on in Ukraine, where the Russian government has for months, really you could say years, been posturing to get to the point where they are making it seem they're basically punching themselves in the face. I don't know if you've ever seen, they're punching themselves in the face so that they can blame and point at somebody else and say that they assaulted them, right? Like that, we've seen that in cartoons and TV shows and stuff like that, right? But yeah, the Ukraine has had situations like earlier last week, they had like fake bombings that were going on where the Russian government was basically bombing their own territories because they had bought off like different officials in those areas. I don't have to say allegedly because the Russian government's not going to sue me. They're just going to kill me. Anyway, but yeah, they basically were bombing their own territories and stuff like that to make it seem like the Ukrainian government was attacking them, which is really funny because like nobody fell for it. Legitimately, like nobody fell for it at all. So I found that interesting. But I guess we'll talk about that some other day. Maybe, probably not. But somebody was complimenting Joe Biden about how he has done a good job of getting out in front of this type of situation, because I don't think there's many Americans, unless you're just like next level stupid, that believe anything that the Russians are really saying about like the Ukrainian situation. So I just want to take that time and clarify that I meant fuck the Russian government, not the actual Russians themselves, who have been pretty outspoken about how they do not agree with this attack that is going upon the Ukrainian people. Like I mentioned before in the pre-show segment, there was a TikTok live stream that I saw last night of a man and a bunch of people in a subway tunnel who I thought were waiting on a subway train, and maybe they were or maybe they were doing a combination of both, but who I thought were waiting on a subway train to come through so that they could escape Ukraine, which was really messed up. And then my friend, threw another wrinkle into it. He's been listening to news outlets and stuff like that from wartime journalists and everything, people who have been to Ukraine, and he was talking about how, like, the subway tunnels double as bomb shelters. So they were not waiting to leave. They were waiting to survive, or waiting to exhale, as some people would say. Hopefully, there are no civilians lost. Hopefully, there are not any more civilians lost. I've already seen reports of there's a pilot who has been given the nickname Ghost of Kiev, who's taken down like multiple Russian planes in air-to-air combat already to defend the capital city. The Klitschko brothers have said that they are going to stay in their home of Ukraine. I think not Vladimir, but the other brother, Klitschko, is the oldest brother, Klitschko, is like the mayor of Kiev. Like, it would be like the equivalent of being the mayor of Washington, D.C. He's the mayor of Kiev, and him and his brother and another Russian fighter have said that they're going to take up arms to defend their homeland. And that takes a lot more. Once again, anything that's like military, anything that's like in regards to the military and stuff like that, you're already 10 times braver than me by signing up to even be there, man. You don't even have to do nothing. You're already braver than me. I won't even show up. You know what I mean? So, and on that note, move on to the final segment of the show as soon as I find my document that has all the topics on it. Here we go. My NHL story, I don't know why, but I just thought this caught my eye a little bit. I even wrote like a little... Anyway, the New York Islanders, Zdeno Chara, has played the most games for an NHL defenseman ever. 1,652 games in his career. I don't even give a shit if it's consecutive. I think he's on his 24th season in the NHL, which is crazy to think about. Just the pain in his joints sounds insane. Just the pain in his knees, let alone his ankles, sounds brutal. And to be able to play 1,652 games of any sport at any level. Like, how many of us think that we've played a singular game, a singular sport in our life over 1,000 times? Because I don't think I've played over 1,000 pickup basketball games. I don't think I've played over 1,000. I know I haven't played over 1,000 Quidditch matches because I average like 25 a season or something like that. But yeah, to think about that, in the NHL, just in the NHL, to have played 1,652 games of NHL hockey at the highest level against some of the best players on the face of the planet, and to be able to stick around long enough, right? Like, you have to be providing value in the course of being able to do that. It's not just about showing up, it's about showing up and being elite. And he has been doing that for years, decades, year in and year out. I know a lot of us like to think of athleticism in the guise of great athletic feats like jumping really high or running really fast. Longevity and grit and toughness, which all the things that it takes to be an NHL defenseman, are forms of athleticism as well. Things that some people are just not born with, but on top of that, have the ability to be able to hone to a high level, right? And I think that you gotta give credit where credit is due. God damn it, man. That is insane to think about. Chara even got into a fight in this game. The New York Islanders San Jose Sharks game that he played in. I just want to know what this guy's stretching routine is, because clearly he's figured out something that a lot of other athletes haven't, or maybe he just built different like a lot of people say. I just wanted to point that out. That's crazy to think about. 1,652 games. I don't think I've done anything in my life that many times. Except maybe like breathe or like pee and poop. You know what I mean? And I'm not even, I'm not elite at that. You know what I mean? I said something about Russia, and now there's like Russian bots in my chat on YouTube. Interesting. Also really wondering how those bots get past the algorithm for YouTube. Like, they're like really blatantly obvious that they're bots. At least I hope they are. You know what I mean? Other stuff, NBA stuff, the drama, never shy of drama is the NBA. There is a meme that I have in my phone that literally says 0 day. It's like a little incident counter, but instead of saying 0 days since our last accident, it says 0 days since our last NBA drama. That makes you say, what the fuck? So we start here with a team that is completely out of the playoff race, right? A team that is currently in the West and near the bottom of the West as well, with 23 wins in total on the season, 23 and 36. They are quite a few games back. They are 26 games back of the Phoenix Suns with less than 2 months to go in the season. Jesus Christ, man. I did not know. It's just so wild when you like double digit. Like, it's one thing to be double-digit games back. It's another thing to almost be 30 games back of first place in a certain conference. But yeah, 26 games back is where the New Orleans Pelicans find themselves. They recently made a trade for CJ McCollum, and in relation to what that trade could potentially fruit for them, they are currently tied with the San Antonio Spurs at 23 wins in total on the season, which, by the way, man, turns out losing 4 Hall of Famers really does a number on your ability to play at a high level. But yeah, they are They're one spot. They're 2 games away from being in the play-in tournament, because that goes all the way down to the 10th seed, right? So the Portland Trail Blazers currently hold it. They have 25 wins on the season. So, yeah, it's wild. Anyway, they made a trade, got CJ McCollum. And they got CJ McCollum and made a trade that, if you listen, by the way, another media suggestion, listen to CJ McCollum's Pull-Up podcast. He's very open and honest. I think CJ McCollum is about to become the greatest athlete to go from pro sport athlete to broadcaster. It is too much fun listening to that guy's show. Anyway, he was really open and honest about the trade. From the Trailblazers to the Pelicans. He actually talked about how he was involved with the not only destination selection, but also in terms of like trying to figure out what is a viable deal for him. And he was able to pick the New Orleans Pelicans as a good place for him to go, which is cool that the Trailblazers went out there and got some goodwill when they could have, because they could have easily just been like, oh, this is business, because so many people within the realm of sports are willing to just chalk every horrible thing that happens when there are human beings involved, where it's like, oh man, you're a general manager, so you got to do what you got to do. But it's also like, you're a general manager that's known CJ McCollum since he was like 22? Or you're a team, an organization that's known CJ McCollum since he was in his early 20s, and he is now a father and married, right? I think you, as a human being, not even like as a professional, owe him the respect of being like open and honest about the trade situation, especially considering CJ McCollum has been at the source of a ton of trade rumors over the past couple of years. So, that being said, ladies and gents, CJ McCollum now a New Orleans Pelican. There was a story that came out during All-Star Week that he had not talked to Zion Williamson, who is the star and presumed to be future franchise player for the New Orleans Pelicans. He had not talked to him at all since arriving in New Orleans, which, happens. No, it doesn't, actually. That's the problem. So he hadn't talked to him at all since he had arrived in New Orleans, and there was like some kind of degree of slight that goes along with it. But the fact of the matter is that he talked to him afterwards. They talked to him afterwards. There were people who were really critical of it. Like JJ Redick was pretty critical of him on ESPN, saying that, like, yeah, like, Zion is kind of a standoffish teammate, which, being at the level of an NBA player who also has, Nike is Jumpman is heavily invested in the success of Zion Williamson, and Zion has actually been, like, let's be for real, Zion's been in a bubble since he, like, started to emerge, which was early on in his high school career. So his ability to relate to other people who are maybe just as famous, if not more famous than him, probably is not all that great. And maybe because he's also in a dark place with his injury, because quite frankly, there's a lot of people talking, and maybe it's had to creep in his head at some point or another. He's not going to be the same guy. He's not going to be the same guy after this. That may not necessarily be true, but it has to be something that's creeped into your mind, especially since he's had to go get a second procedure done on the same foot. And he's probably just disappointed he hasn't been able to play for a long period of time. But JJ Redick did say that he is a standoffish teammate overall, which, I guess time will tell, because a lot of people can say a lot of things, but as soon as you start winning games, then people will stop being as concerned about it, right? That is a big aspect of what's going on here. But yeah, that's the drama with the New Orleans Pelicans, ladies and gentlemen. They did not have their 2 primary players talk to each other until after the All-Star break, even though they've gone. CJ McCollum has played like 7 games for the Pelicans so far, and he hadn't talked to Zion Williamson until he had played 5 of those 6 games. So skeptical. And of course, that led to a lot of people speculating that Zion doesn't want to be with the team anymore. There's a report that came out about how he doesn't like David Griffin, who, by the way, was the general manager if you remember, the general manager for the Cavaliers team that LeBron put together and everything like that, and eventually got fired because the Pelicans have never signed an extension to a general manager. In all of their history as a team, have never extended a general manager. Crazy to think about that, but yes, very true. Wild, sorry. Trying to get away from using the word crazy. Wild to think about, but true. Other stuff that's going on in the NBA. Derrick Rose is apparently having another procedure done on his ankle, which apparently this is related to like a skin infection after the initial procedure to fix his ankle. So hopefully he's going to be back in full force here pretty soon and ready to cook it up. Other stuff, the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know if you guys heard about this trade or not. They traded Ben Simmons and Seth Curry for James Harden. They played for the first time tonight. It's February 25th. They played for the first time tonight, and James Harden and Joel Embiid had their opponent in the bonus within 4 minutes of the first quarter, apparently. Like, that's what StatMuse tweeted out. And it was hard for me to believe because I was like, what? Are they joking? Like, is this like some kind of like weird joke that they're making or whatever? But yeah, no, they beat the brakes out the Minnesota Timberwolves, who, by the way, Timberwolves are looking like a playoff team for a good chunk of this time. And quite frankly, I can see it happening. You know what I mean? Like, they're looking like relatively competitive. They're currently in the 7th seed right now, and they've been kind of holding steady throughout the course of the game. They clearly have defined teams that they can and cannot beat, but they're beating the teams that are below them. And now Karl Anthony Towns wins the 3-point competition, which has absolutely nothing to do with playing basketball very well. But nonetheless, they could be on to something. They could be finally, after all these years, have put together a team that can make the playoffs. But nonetheless, the Sixers won 133-102 tonight versus those Timberwolves that are probably going to be a playoff team out of the West. And I think that's something to be said. They got murdered in the foul situation, and I have to imagine that this is truly the ultimate this is like the fusion dance of the two best foul getters in the NBA, which, once again, I'm a big proponent of the fact that James Harden actually does get fouled, and he knows that it's easier for him to get free throws than for him to do the things that takes to make buckets on a regular basis. And if the refs stopped calling the fouls the way that they stopped calling the fouls, he would stop flopping. And as soon as they did, he stopped flopping. Or he got better at flopping. You know what I mean. Other stuff. What was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about the Brooklyn Nets. Right. The whole situation with Ben Simmons going to the Nets, kind of being like very openly being like, it's over. Like, I'm glad that I'm not there anymore. Which, hey, guess what? I think the Sixers are glad that he's not there anymore either. Seth Curry had this to say. I said from day one, even when he was out early in the season, people were asking me if I feel like if Ben comes back, should he apologize to us or whatever. I understand the business. He doesn't need to apologize to anybody when he's on the court. I know he's going to do his job, and he's going to do what it does. So, by the way, really hard for me to picture Seth Curry hitting us with he gonna do what it does. You know what I mean? So I understand the business. He was doing what he felt was best for himself, business-wise and personal-wise, and the team's going to do the same thing as far as making trades or whatever. So I understand it. I've been around it. I don't take anything personal. When we're on the court, we're teammates. Everything's fine, and we depend on each other to do good things. There's been nothing negative he's done to me personally, so I'm fine. Ben Simmons basically, like we said before, came out and said he was glad that he's not a 76er anymore. And the funny part is, like, the Sixers and the Nets could very, very much meet each other in the Eastern Conference Finals with the way things are shaking out. The Sixers are currently the 3 seed. The Nets have slipped all the way down to the 8 seed. Obviously, we know what that's about. They're waiting on Kevin Durant to come back and put the cape on. Right? Ben Simmons, by the way, no projected time for when he is going to return and actually play, which, of course, leaned into the question that I asked when he got traded. Are we sure that Ben Simmons even wants to play for the Nets? Or are we sure that he's still going to play for the Nets, right? This situation could turn ugly. I will say the Nets did something also very sneaky, not only getting Seth Curry, who I said is the most valuable part of this trade when it's all said and done, but on top of that, they went and got Goran Dragic after he got the Dragon himself, the return of the Dragon, after he got cut by Culture, the number 2 team in the East right now, the Miami Heat. So, yeah, Wild stuff, wild stuff. Also, like to take a time and point out the simple fact, the fact that the MVP of the league may be playing for the Chicago Bulls and it's not Zach LaVine. The MVP of the league is also bringing back the potential MVP of the league is also making the mid-range game cool again. And shout out to DeMar DeRozan for after years and years of people making fun of the fact that you're not great at shooting threes, finally proving them wrong, not only with your overwhelming success in the NBA as a basketball player with the way that you play, from your time with the Toronto Raptors, your time with the San Antonio Spurs, to now your time with the Chicago Bulls, a young gun, heavily talented basketball team who is the number one team in the East. He stayed true to who he was, and now he's on the path to one of the best seasons. He's on the path to the best season he's ever had. And like I said before, could be MVP of the league when this is all said and done. They're on a 6-game win streak. Pretty impressive. The Milwaukee Bucks, as usual, still lurking. I feel like I do a disservice. No, I feel like I do it properly when I just keep saying the Milwaukee Bucks still lurking in the background with no drama whatsoever. Still doing those things where Giannis had back-to-back 50-point games the other day and like nobody talked about it. Like before the All-Star break. Yeah. Nothing to see here. Nothing to concern yourself with here. The Boston Celtics actually this season playing like a team that's run through Jason Tatum, and I don't know if there's been collective buy-in by the Celtics not organization, but everybody else on the team. Because remember last year it was like, oh, it's going to be Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but now it's like Jason Tatum taking the full lead and Jaylen Brown getting everything else after that, which is exactly what you want to happen. Like just Jason Tatum, like many people have speculated before, has the potential to be the best basketball player in the world at some point. And right now, he's struggling to lead a Boston Celtics team that, quite frankly, has messed up big time in the draft on multiple occasions in terms of their over pursuit of guards and their under pursuit of big men. Let that be a lesson, kids. Somehow the Toronto Raptors have found themselves in the 7th seed. I don't even know. Pascal Siakam, Spicy P, still out there cooking, still on the team. And the Hawks, the team that made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, are 10th in the East. Turns out running it back is not a good idea in sports. The Knicks, another playoff team from just a year ago, who we mentioned before. We talked about this before. They have 9 more wins or 11 more wins than the Detroit Pistons right now. But guess what? They're all outside of the play-in tournament and the playoffs at all. The Knicks are a team that is one of the best in terms of three-point shooting in the league. And they are one of the better defensive rated teams. They just don't have anybody else other than Julius Randle to go out there and make things happen. So that's fun for them. Luka Doncic admitted that people's critiques of his fitness, which, by the way, we need to go back to talking about the Pelicans after this. Luka Doncic admitted his critiques of people critiquing his conditioning and his fitness because he's one of those guys who likes to play himself into shape. Which, hey, by the way, if you can get away with it, you can get away with it, baby. You know what I mean? Like going back to the Pelicans thing, there was a float that was in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, which, by the way, if you have a chance to get out to Mardi Gras, I suggest doing it. It is the first full-fledged Mardi Gras since 2020, and they go on ham. Like the parades are beautiful, and the culture of Mardi Gras is fun, despite the fact that the people of New Orleans don't want you there. If you are not an asshole about it, please go. What was I gonna say? Oh, there was a float. It was like satire. And the meanest one that they had on there was one was a joke about Drew Brees and how Tom Brady was better than him and all this kind of stuff like that. The other one was like, oh man, the other one escapes me. But anyway, there's a Zion Williamson one where they had a jersey on him and he was displayed as being like a portly, fat person, and he was surrounded by fried chicken. And I thought that was massively disrespectful and had hints of racism. I would even say that's racist even if a black person painted it. You know what I mean? Because it feeds into a stereotype and it's fat shaming because, let's be for real, you can talk about how large Zion Williamson is. He is still 1,000 times the athlete that you will ever be. Like, I feel like the people who talk shit about Zion Williamson don't realize that, like, fat Zion is still faster, stronger, can leap higher, 10 times the athlete and basketball player you can ever imagine that you could be. So it's one of those weird things where it's like people expect an athlete to have like the absolutely shredded abs and the biceps and stuff like that, and they don't expect them to be like, oh, I can visibly see that you eat on a regular basis. So, I always find it really fucked up when people do that kind of stuff. The fat shaming is one thing. People have been, as a fat person, people have been calling me fat for years and making fun of how fat I am for years. I'm totally cool with that. Not cool with it, but you know what I mean. Like it. At a certain point, I realized a lot of those people aren't the athlete or don't put in the kind of work that I put in physically, like in terms of training and stuff like that. So it's really hard for me to respect anything that they have to say about me. That's happened a bunch of times, right? But one thing that really comes down to is like that, like the fried chicken thing is racist. The fried chicken thing is like super racist. So I would prefer if that wasn't a thing anymore. So fuck whoever did that. By the way, the Phoenix Suns still much better than everybody else. Turns out Devin Booker is legit as fuck, like we all suspected. The Golden State Warriors, the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, still waiting on Klay Thompson to get back to his elite level 3-point shooting. But the fact of the matter is, they cooking, baby. They really cooking, and they don't have Draymond Green right now. That's really impressive. Oh, by the way, Ja Morant looking like the guy that we all thought he was, right? Looking like when we saw Zion Williamson got drafted and Ja Morant got drafted, and we did that story a billion times about how they played on the same AAU team, and everybody kind of overlooked Ja, even though we saw Ja play really, really well in the NCAA tournament. We all knew that he was going to get to the point where he was going to be able to carry an NBA franchise on his back, right? And also doing it by doing like really cool dunks. We all knew that, right? Cool. All right. Just making sure. The Denver Nuggets, sadly, in the 6th seed here, but a little ray of hope that Jamal Murray might be back here pretty soon. Something to look forward to. Oh, also, in terms of key injuries, Chicago Bulls are able to maintain the number 1 seed in the East with Lonzo Ball out for like a couple more weeks. So, yeah, some of these injuries that are popping up, like Kevin Durant, Lonzo Ball coming back at some point. Was it Chris Paul's hurt right now for the Phoenix Suns? Draymond Green is hurt for the Warriors. Some of these key injuries coming, when these guys come back, they're going to be like these teams are going to be a whole different level. Jamal Murray coming back. There's a so the Clippers are currently in the 8th seed right now. Not a surprise whatsoever. It's hard to really be like a top tier elite team when you are a team that's built around 2 players and one of those 2 players is not playing, right? Paul George, in particular, kind of doing it by himself. He's shown that he's capable of doing it by himself. They currently have a losing record, but they're still in the playoff. They're in the play-in game right now. They're just behind the Minnesota Timberwolves. But one thing about Kawhi Leonard, there's been so much murkiness around whether or not he is going to come back this season. There's been reports that he had a chance to come back like right in the playoffs or something like that in the midst of the playoffs, or like if they made it like a certain distance in the playoffs. There's also been reports that it's like his season's pretty much over. I would imagine since he's on the older side that his season's pretty much over. Even like the timing is just terrible. Like he got hurt in the Western Conference Finals, which is shitty to begin with. But nonetheless, if they can get Kawhi Leonard back, they probably won't have a shot, because no way that Kawhi Leonard is going to be able to come back from an ACL tear and then be able to play at Kawhi Leonard levels in the NBA playoffs. Shout out to the Sacramento Kings for repping for their boy Alex Len. If you don't know, Alex Len has been playing in the league for a really long time. Originally drafted by the Phoenix Suns. The Nuggets and the Kings stood in solidarity with Alex Len. He is from the Ukraine, and his family's still there. So they linked arms with the Black History shirts on that all the teams have, and mad respect, bro, mad respect. And Alex Len is one of 2 Ukrainian players in the NBA. So this is a big time for him right now, because it's not like he can hop on a flight and go get his family, right? He got to be terrified right now. Like he's got to be. Wishing his family well, bro. Really, I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that situation. And like I said before, DeMar DeRozan, potential MVP candidate. He is also on like a crazy streak of 8 consecutive games in the NBA with at least 35 points. He had 37 last night to get a win. The NFL Combine is back on Monday. Let me make sure I got that date right, because I think I fucked that up. NFL Combine dates. It starts Tuesday and it ends next Monday. Starts Tuesday, March 1st. and then it will end next Monday, which is weird because it seems like they spread it out even more. There was a situation going on where they had players. There's a situation going on where they had players who were. God damn it. There it is. Sorry. I didn't write this story down, but it was really weird. The NFL sent out basically a notice saying that they were going to put all the players for the NFL Combine in a bubble. If you don't know, I think it's like 150 players or something like that. 150 total players were supposed to... Yeah, 150 draft prospects or 150 plus draft prospects were going to boycott the NFL Combine if they were forced to be in a bubble because it would stop them from being... If you've ever watched the Combine before, which, by the way... If there was one event that I used to sneak the most time away while I was in school, like straight up, I used to like get school laptops, and during lunch, I would watch the NFL Combine on NFL.com because it was a ton of fun for me personally. And then on top of that, I just wanted to see cool people do cool stuff, right? Like I talk about, that's why I got into sports. But the NFL Combine, if you know anything about it, there's a lot of, and I haven't been able to find anybody on YouTube. And if you are a person that watch it, like is on YouTube all the time, and you know where to find NFL draft prospects who are like doing the video diaries, because last year JC Horn did it a couple of times, and there was a couple other players who also actively did it. But the number one thing that I wanted to check out, or they show you this all the time, like it's the build up to the day of the Combine, and then they stop showing the video diaries when the workouts happen, right? Because they have the TV cameras out there, and they can't have just like random people recording the 40-yard dash like right next to it and stuff like that, getting in the way of shots. But if you know this, you know that like companies like Exos, who specialize in this time of the year, like this is their prime time of the year to help people get the peak performance out of not only their bodies but also physically in terms of executing the 40-yard dash, the 3-cone drill, all that kind of stuff like that. They give them their food in the morning, their protein bars, their drinks, their protein shakes, and all that kind of stuff like that. That's customized based off of each one of those individual athletes' bodies. Their agents are paying for them to be to tip-top shape. Their agents are probably paying for them to be in better shape or a different shape than they will ever be when they get to the NFL, because there are some guys who modify their body specifically for these type of situations in the NFL Combine. Because there are some people who have questions about certain things. For instance, there are some guys who weigh too much. Most of the time, there are guys who weigh too little, who have to like put on fake weight, legitimately put on fake weight, and then go out there and prove that they can still do what they did when they were in college with individual numbers. That's like a real thing. But nonetheless, they need those guys there. Like they're literally in a training room stretching them out beforehand. They get them with the Theragun. They do like the actual calisthenic stretches before they put their cleats on. They help them with their mentality in terms of forming and remembering certain cues that they need to follow through, because those trainers are not allowed on the field or in the stadium while it's going on. They have to watch a TV, which of course is like nerve-wracking for them. They have to watch a TV while their athletes go out there and perform. That being said, they were planning to put like all the players in a bubble, like to completely cut them off from like the world. And, like nobody could visit them, nobody could help them. They have these trainers show up in the morning when they're in the hotel rooms and help them get ready for the draft, right? That's like a real thing, and they were trying to cut that part of it off, and it's a huge tool for these athletes to go out there so that they can play at the peak of their powers or compete at the peak of their abilities. And the agents came up with a brilliant idea, and this is, by the way, the bubble was to institute like COVID safety protocols, because I'm assuming there are people who are coming to the Combine who are not vaccinated and chose to not be vaccinated or disclose their status or whatever. Which, by the way, if you're the NFL, you should just be like, well, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come to the you can't come to the Combine, and then that'll sort it out. But nonetheless, there's a lot of situations where their trainers needed, people other than the athlete are needed to get the athlete ready for the Combine. So they had a ton of work they basically staged a boycott across multiple agencies to like be, hey, guess what? If you institute these rules, our guys are not coming. And they did it as a collective group before they were ever members of the PA or anything like that, because they haven't been drafted or anything. So they did it as a collective group to say like, hey, if you do this, we're not coming to the Combine. Which is, of course, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, why does the NFL need those players? It's like, well, the NFL needs those guys to show up because they have to put on, this is primetime television now, in case you forgot. Like there's an hour of the Combine that is shown on primetime television, not only on ESPN, but on ABC. So if you are not going out there and getting the best of the best, you're not going to see the record-breaking 40-yard dashes or the potential record-breaking 40-yard dashes, the three-cone drills, the crazy high vertical leaps, the crazy long broad jumps if you're not getting the best of the best out there. And if you are, those 150 guys, I'm assuming, include some guys who are projected to be first-round picks when it's all said and done. Not that first-round picks go out there and perform at the combine anymore. That seems to be more and more prevalent to protect their status, which is smart. I'm not even gonna front. When you got the lead already, you got to protect the lead sometimes, especially when the lead. The reward for finishing in the lead is millions of dollars, generational type wealth. But nonetheless, that's a factor in some of this stuff. But they can't go out here and be like, well, like the entire offensive line group didn't show up for the NFL Combine because they didn't want to be in the bubble. So we're going to skip all their drills. The entire quarterback group didn't show up because their agents told them that they're not coming. And I'm assuming if one of these agencies was CAA, one of the big five agencies on the planet. If one of these agencies was CAA that said that, hey, none of our representative or none of our people that we represent are coming to the combine if we have a bubble situation in terms of how they're going to be treated, because it affects them mentally, right? Like there's already so many other mental factors that go into the combine, like the long wait time between training reps, the long wait time to get medicals that we saw a couple years ago. Like a guy, I think it was like Reggie Ragland or something like that, snapped at a nurse, and it made like headline news at some point. But whatever. You should go check it out. I think it was Reggie Ragland. It was a linebacker from Alabama, which, I mean, that's like 50% of the linebackers in the NFL. How'd you get so thin, my guy? It's the black shirt. Shout out to whoever swag_marine in the chat is. It's the black shirt. It makes me look thin. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, no, that's 100% what this situation was, right? And also, shout out to you for hopping in the chat. Appreciate you. And chopping it up, swag_marine. If you're in the chat, you got some hot takes on sports, feel free to drop them in there. If you got questions, feel free to drop them in there as well. We are almost wrapping this up. We're talking about the NFL Combine. It's going to be a ton of fun. I'd also like to take this time and plug my TikTok series that I'm doing, where I take like a random NFL prospect that catches my eye or somebody I hear being talked about on the podcast a bunch, and I just give you like a less than a minute kind of breakdown of what they've done leading up to the NFL draft, and to tell you what they're projected to be. The HBCU Legacy Bowl game happened for the first time ever, and it is literally a bowl setup, and it's sponsored by Microsoft Surface, so it's got big money behind it. It is a bowl game it's basically the Senior Bowl, but only for HBCU students. So I think it allows undergrads as well. Okay, well, your boy was too late to go to the bar with his girlfriend. Definitely not going to hear the end of that. Sorry, guys. Sorry we failed, guys. We got too caught up talking about sports. Anyway, but nonetheless, we talked about it before. What were we saying? We were just talking about the NFL Combine. And then the HBCU Legacy Bowl game, which is really cool. Media suggestion, if you got some time, check out Destroying. He is a big time football YouTuber. You should check him out. He's a former UCF punter who at one point was basically hit with like a Title IX thing where he can't, or the NCAA hit him with a violation saying that he has to either return all the money he made from making YouTube videos, or he has to give up his scholarship at UCF, and he chose to give up his scholarship at UCF so he can continue to make YouTube videos, and it's panned out for him pretty well. He's got millions of subscribers, and he's pretty major on pretty much every single social media platform. Pretty major on every single social media platform that you can think of, and he actually got invited to the HBCU Legacy Bowl, and he was on the sidelines, walking up and down the sidelines with him and his cameraman, doing their typical commentary like they do for high school games, but for this Legacy Bowl game. And one of the guys he actually talked to was Antoine Collier, who used to play at UCF until an incident happened with the police where they arrested him there were 3 guns in the car that he was in, and he had a license for 2 out of the 3, and they arrested him for illegal possession of a weapon, which, wow, talk about rough. He said that he didn't know the 3rd gun was in there, and it was the one that was underneath the seat that he was sitting on. The other 2 guns he had a license for. So that's tough. That's a tough look. Not a tough look, but like that's a tough situation because it seemed like he was on his P's and Q's a bunch. But nonetheless, we have What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, the HBCU Legacy Bowl game. Check that out. The Senior Bowl happened already. There's a ton of video. If you are a person who's like trying to get in a draft season, definitely check out, just type in Senior Bowl, and you can see all the tweets that happen throughout the course of the Senior Bowl. Also, if you're trying to get into the whole draft season type situation, follow the Reese Senior Bowl. Follow Phil Savage. He's the guy who's in charge of the Senior Bowl. He's actually a scout himself, and he gives you kind of nods on what prospects to look for and stuff. So I would also suggest following the Athletic Football Show, the Athletics NFL Football Show, and then also following who else was it? Also following the Tailgate podcast from PFF, because that is Austin Renner, and they're the NFL draft guys that they have. So check that out. And then check out Jordan Reed from the NFL Draft Network. Well, they're just called the Draft Network. The draft is coming up, so get ready for that. I'm going to try and get somebody on to talk about it as soon as possible. Also, still working on exit interviews, getting all 32 teams. Got a couple of people that I've reached out to that have not responded yet, and a couple that have. So trying to mix it up a little bit, trying to get some players on here to talk about the great seasons that they had. But shout out to everybody who checked out the show so far and really joined me to have a good time tonight, I would imagine, on a Friday night. I got to go do some paperwork for a gig that I accepted, a sports thing that I accepted, and I got to go out there and do adult things for it. And apparently I've missed the plans that I had with my girlfriend. So not great, guys. Not great boyfriend activities tonight. Other than that, I feel like we had a great show. Sorry about that. All right, let's pack it up. Make sure you wash your hands, wash your ass, please. If you have the ability to take a full shower, please do that. Do some good in the world. Try to do some good in the world. And most importantly, go home, Roger.